Welcome everyone, we have our Broken Necromancer build ready, so look behind me and you get to see what happens. I don't have to say much, you can see exactly what happens. So there's one button, that's all you need to click. We don't even need to do anything, all you need to do is click one button. You don't lose health, you move very fast, you deal AoE damage, everything dies around you. And this is just a little highlight. I'll show you guys the highlight of this particular build, which you get one extra skill slot because of this. And all you see is I have infinite cooldowns and I have infinite damage next to enemies. And we do really good single target damage as well, I'll show you very soon. So AoE target, everything dies around me, nothing survives. And my skeletons, my summons, we have all the summons. Everything you wanted for the Necromancer. The summons, the skeletons, the corpse explosion, the burst damage as well. Very, very powerful. So I'm sure you guys are pretty excited to see what this build is about. So what I'll do is, I'll show you guys our items and also our skill tree, and then I'll show you some of the concept of the build. And then what I'll do is, I'll go through a full dungeon replay of this build and show you guys exactly what we'll do and how powerful it is. So it's really, really good. So skills of choices, we have Rise Skeletons, we have Golems, we have Blood Mist, which is the center core of the build. This is going to be a Blood Mist Necromancer. We also have Army of the Dead. We'll be using Decompose, and also we have a burst damage with Bone Spear. Notice that we actually don't have Corpse Explosion, but guess what guys, we actually have level 7 Corpse Explosion hiding in the skill tree, and this skill is automatically activated, and this skill deals tremendous damage, and we don't even need a skill slot, cause one of our spells, Blood Mist, will automatically cast this spell whenever we're ready, and Blood Mist have almost no cooldown, so this particular build is so powerful and also so broken. I think I really want to try this build when the game launches. Now in order to understand our skill tree, I think it's the best I show you guys the items and also codex of legendaries, and then you understand the concept of the build. So the cornerstone of the build is going to focus on Blood Mist, and also the Corpse Explosion that is triggered when Blood Mist is activated. So when I go into Blood Mist, I will trigger Corpse Explosion around me. I'll also drop corpses around me because of the passive. So this is gonna be the legendary codex you really want. And in case you guys don't have this, in the next video guys, I'll show you how to exactly get this one with gambling. I have really good success doing this, and I'll show you guys the exact method. It's not that bad with gambling, trust me. So how this works is, when you explode, you also reduce the cooldown of Blood Mist by 1.8 seconds. This spell itself has about 18-second cooldown, but after multiple explosions, you're actually down to almost no cooldown. And this spell itself will activate all the corpse explosion around you, so you don't have to click multiple times for corpse explosion. This spell does everything. It saves one skill slot, because I don't have to put corpse explosion onto my skill slot. This spell does everything. It's like a, it's a hotkey. It's like an add-on hotkey, right? It's so good. Now as we go through our other legendary codexes, they're not that important, but they really helps with single target damage. I was able to find a two-handed legendary codex which boosts my Bone Spear's damage by 200% and also provides lots of vulnerability. What you're going to see in the skill tree is our Corpse Explosion will benefit from stunning, slow, and also from the vulnerability, and this will deal multiplicative of damage because of that. So having increased damage with vulnerability and Bone Spear is really good on the two-hand weapon. I'm going with two-hand weapon for the higher damage, and you can see this weapon is not that strong. It's only 327, I could go even higher, but at the moment I'm still adjusting the build a little bit. So as for the boots, you really want something that spread the crowd control. You have slow, you have vulnerability, and you might have stun, and this is really good to spread it, because again, you'll deal more damage when you crowd control enemies. Now coming over to the helmet. The helmet is something I found to be really nice offensive, because you'll deal more damage to unstoppable enemies, and those are usually bosses. So dealing 44% more damage and also having a longer duration for crowd control is really good for this particular defensive and also offensive codex. Next up, we have life regen. This is not a big deal. Here I have 7.1% life regen just because I'll be close to enemies. It's not the biggest thing. You can tell this is actually from my Barbarian for the Thorn build. What I also thought of is we can reduce damage by 25%, and this is also really good. But in the end, I was just too lazy to click, I'll just decide to heal. So both of the chests can work. As for the gloves, this is optional, but this does help, because you'll slow yourself down when you cast Blood Mist. And if I don't have these particular gloves, I'll show you guys. I'm a little slow, right? I'm a little bit slow. But if I have this spell and I cast Blood Mist, I'll cast in 9 seconds, it's a little bit faster. And let's wait for a little bit, I'll show you guys again, so you see the difference. So, let's go. See, I basically move at my normal movement speed, and I'm also boosted because my boots have movement speed, which is really good. Now, in terms of the pens, I'm actually saving these pens for later. Now, what happened is I'm trying to get barrier on my build. If I can get barrier on my build, I deal much more damage. So I have choices of adding this particular codex onto the pens, but I'm a little hesitant. I want to perfect my build, but the build is so strong I want to show you guys, right? And in terms of the accessories, we have the rings which increase skeleton damage by 21%, and this is really good. We use skeletons, we use all the minions. And finally, I do have a really nice codex which provide Bone Storm and also Blood Wave damage, but I don't use that. We will be using Army of the Dead. And so you can see about 1/3 of the codex is not that necessary. The biggest one for me will be the Blood Mist and also the increased damage for the vulnerability with the Bone Spear onto the target. Now coming over to our skill tree, you'll see the focus of the build will focus on the Corpse Explosion. So let's focus on the Corpse Explosion. You can see this is level 7, and I'll show you guys the stats of my gears very soon. Level 7 Corpse Explosion will deal tremendous damage, and with its increased radius and also its increased damage to vulnerable, stunned and also slow enemies, this is a really good multiplier, and all of those stacks. So you can see right away, we'll be going into 1 point into Decompose and also its upgrade to slow enemies, and also gaining more essence. After that, we have not that many points, so this is optional. I went with 4 points into Bone Spear, and its upgrades which give us more vulnerability onto the enemies we hit. Now it is also optional to go with Healed Flesh, which gives you more corpses, but ideally we do enough damage without it, so it's okay to not having it. Now coming over to the Macab section, we can see 5 points into Corpse Explosion, and also 1 point will be going to Blood Mist. We'll be upgrading Blood Mist with the reduction to cooldowns, which is not really happening for me, but this is really good. Blood Mist will leave behind 1 corpse. Most people underestimate this particular ability, but when you have nothing on the ground, you'll still explode. See, I'm still exploding. I'm still exploding and will still explode for a lot more when it's enemies. So this is a really good passive for more burst damage. You're getting 3 corpses, you're getting more damage. And because we have the passive over here, which is fueled by death, when you explode and also consume corpses, you deal 12% more damage. Now as we move over to the next 2 sections, you can see I don't have enough points in the beta to go further. We can definitely be stronger in the open game, right? We can be so strong in the launch. And finally, I'll go with Army of the Dead. Now this is not going to be the highest burst damage spell, but what it does is it has a chance of giving us 15% to leave more corpses. And if I do this correctly, I can almost one-shot any of the boss. And you're going to see in the replay, I actually did it wrongly. But if I do this correctly, you get so many corpses and you deal more Corpse Explosion. It also resummons all of your armies, and your armies can give you more corpses. Now on the topic of army, because our build is so good, we have everything. So you can see I can have my Skeleton Warriors, Skeleton Mages and Golems because I save 1 skill slot, because I automatically activate my Corpse Explosion. So for the Skeleton Warriors, we'll go with Rapers, which Rapiers, I keep pronouncing it wrong. So it will provide you 15% chance of corpses with all 4 of those attacks, because you have 4 of them. And more corpses is good, right? So for the Skeleton Mages, we'll go with the increased damage for 40% if they survive longer. You can also go with Fortify and also more corpses, but I didn't feel the necessity for this. I went with more damage. But of course, you can go for more corpses. And finally for the Golem, it's hard to get him up, but once we have the extra skill slot, we can do it. We'll give Golem more health, and when it takes damage, it can shed more corpses. And when you press the Golem button, he will also taunt, which means he can, stop shooting off corpses at the enemies as he take damage. Now let's briefly talk about the stats and also socketing for the build. So not much of a big deal, to be honest. We can go with maximum life percent or Thorn for the armor, and also for the weapon, go with increased critical damage to crocodile enemies. And for the sockets for the accessories, just go with resistance. Any of those is short of. So a few of the highlights over here. One is that I do not have a good chest piece, of course, but my gloves and also my amulets are very good. Notice my amulet plus corpse skills and also Macab skills. And over here, my pants is actually really good for rare pants, because it also provides 1 more rank for Corpse Explosion. And this is one of the reasons I can get to 7 rank with Corpse Explosion, while having also 2 additional rank for Blood Mist, for lowering cooldown and also more healing. So this is really nice, right? And in terms of the other stats, you can go with close range damage increase, and also you can go with vulnerability damage increase, slowed enemy damage increase, and you can also go with any of the critical damage, critical chances, even overpower damage can work, because we're very durable, very tanky. And of course, if you do get lower cost of essence, it's also good for the Bone Spear. Now I know I said a lot, and I promised to give you guys a full replay of the dungeon. So let's go through this dungeon. You're gonna see I do things a little slower and do things a little different, simply because during the dungeon, I will actually be testing a lot of things. Now right away as we start, I'll tell you guys the rotation of the spell. Basically, just look for a group of enemies and you cast your Blood Mist. That's it. There isn't that much to do. And if enemies survive, you can cast Bone Spear to vulnerable them, and then you cast more Blood Mist. And if enemy still survives, you just, you taunt with your golem, you cast more Bone Spear, and you finish them off. Now, to briefly talk to you guys about the boss. So here you can see that basically I'm looking for a group of enemies. I don't want to cast onto single target, but I can still do a lot of good damage onto single target, you'll see. So we're looking for the 2 activation key over here for the dungeon. And yep, whenever I have more than 2 or 3 enemies, they die instantly. Even if there's 1 enemies, we don't have problem with it. So, this is a really smooth run because, they can't hit me and I move super fast and everything dies around me. And the best thing is, if you get trapped, you press Blood Mist, you have Unstoppable. But the downside is, you can't open doors. I was like, what? Oh, there's Elite. Let's have a look. So, this Elite doesn't have too many friends, he dies too fast, because he's corpses. And we also dropped corpses. And I'm trying to show you guys the Elite which is by himself. Okay, this Elite by himself, right? So, we can cast Blood Mist, and his friend came, but you can also cast Bone Spear. The Bone Spear crit for about 3,700. I think you guys saw that. It's a really nice spell, and when they're vulnerable, you deal more damage. Because the first Bone Spear will make them vulnerable, the second Bone Spear will deal 200% more damage. Which is tremendous, right? Now, the mobility of the build is a little slower because, you're not a mage, you're not a rogue, you're not blinking, right? But no one can stop me. If I get snared, I can cast Blood Mist. If I want to do anything, I just cast Blood Mist. I'm selling out for Blood Mist. And here's another Elite. He casts a wall, I can go through the wall, and before the Blood Mist expires, he dies, and my entire skill resets. And the second Elite does not survive. It's so good. It's like a one-button gaming for Diablo. But of course, later we'll build onto the build. And because we have multiple legendaries to make the build work, and lots of passives invested, it's not just like randomly, right? And trust me guys, if on the next video, if you want to see how to gamble for a specific legendary, I'll show you guys the cheapest method, and maybe 1000 obols, that's all you need for a lot of the offensive legendaries, which is how I got most of my build. I'll be making a Thorn build, I'll be making a Bone build, and I'll be making a Summons build very soon for you guys. This is the one part, and this is the highlight you saw. So, because there's a lot of small enemies, you have infinite cooldown. Your cooldown resets, and monsters just don't survive. You get to see this part. They don't have a chance, right? It's so satisfying. All you do is pressing one button, you're just floating around. If you guys ever played League of Legends, it's like Vladimir, and he's got infinite cooldowns. It's like he's in WTF mode. It feels so good. And because I have such a high level for Corpse Explosion, it deals tremendous damage. And this is before I slow vulnerable, and also this is before I stun enemies. Once they have those debuffs, we deal more damage. I wish it's an auto-loot system, right? So as we keep going, you can see I'm pretty bad with maps. And one thing you do want to notice is that our skeleton armies will die, simply because they're not that tanky. And at the same time, if they die, it's not a big problem, because you'll have your ultimate which will summon all of them when you're ready for the boss. So when you're fighting for the boss, you don't have a problem. Even if you don't have the minions, even if you don't have anything, it's okay. And here I just want to show off, I didn't even take the Shire, because who needs that, right? It's really powerful. Now, one thing to notice is that because our build will focus on you casting Blood Mist a lot, if you double press Blood Mist, it's gonna cancel it. So unless you want to open doors and do stuff, you don't have to press it again. But if you press it again, you will cancel it instantly. I'll get some water while I enjoy the scenery. Here I went back for the Cursed Chest, simply because for the Cursed Chest, I was like, hey, let's see how quickly we can take it down 5 waves. And apparently very fast. It's so good to the point I was like, I want to play this build so badly. And all you need is pretty much one codex. And how I did was, I got the codex onto the gloves, then I enchanted or imbued the codex onto the amulet. I didn't do the codex onto the two-handed weapon because I don't need that much cooldown reduction. With amulet with 50% more bonus, that's enough. So if I went with a two-handed weapon, I'll lose a lot of damage for my bone spear, like 200% more, right? So this is the option, and I will be making a crafting build for you guys where to be crafting your imbued codex. So which options you have, and sometimes you don't have to craft on the two-handed weapon because you only have one, right? Let's keep going. So over here you're gonna see I'm not that good with directions. And as for the monsters, they don't really survive. And I really want to show you guys a whole dungeon run through. Not because I'm good at dungeons, but I think we had some viewers saying you're skipping a lot and you're not showing the whole gameplay. So I really want to show everything. And of course this dungeon is just for testing, because I like this dungeon. I think it's a dungeon I can find my way around. And also there's a boss. Sometimes I go for a dungeon and there's no boss. And over here, you know what happens? I was like, wait, I only have no skeletons. I'm gonna go back and summon some skeleton mages. I need corpses. But I also forgot I can cast my ultimate. I was like, no, I need corpses. So I actually ran all the way back for the additional corpses to get my last minion. Now, as for the rotation for the boss, what you don't want to do is what I did over here. What you want to do is, you want to be casting your ultimate first, and then you want to hit enemy with the bone spear first, and then cast blood mist after having a lot of corpses. That's not what I did. You also want to taunt with your golem, you also want to buff your skeleton minions. But what I did was, I just pressed all the buttons at once. I was like, what do I do, what do I do? This is the first time I did test this build, right? I was like, oh no, what do I do? Now I pressed too many buttons wrongly. And what you're gonna see, what I mean by wrongly is, I did not use all the corpses that were summoned by my minions, and also by my abilities. So I'll show you guys how many corpses were wasted here. And you got to see me pressing the button. I was like, wow, so many corpses. What if I press my blood mist? And those were like 6 or 5 or 7 corpse explosion that could have done damage to the boss. So you kind of don't want to rush your blood mist, and you kind of want to get your corpses going and then one shot the boss. I pressed too many wrong buttons, and you get to see my mistake, and hopefully you learn from this. Now hopefully you guys enjoyed this build. I really had a good time in the build, and this is before I upgrade anything. And I was quite lucky, guys. Yes, I got 2 skill ranks for corpse explosion, and we're +7. I think I could even go for +8. We don't know, but let me keep trying for the build. I'll share another build with you guys very soon. Now before you go, and if you guys didn't know, we have a new YouTube channel. So I just started a YouTube channel with my girlfriend yesterday, and you can see this is only 12 hours old, this YouTube channel. And if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and check out the behind the scenes and also fun clips and also more stories about us. And then you get to know me a little more personally instead of just reading the news and also the games, right? So I want to share a little bit more with you guys. So make sure you check this channel out if you're interested about Matt and also Uni. She's really funny too, and she's really shy. So I want to give her a surprise and do a shout out for the new channel to get some subscribers. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time.